So, just a quick update on the stimulus package and what we know right now. So far, nothing that great, except for one thing, and that is they are extending the eviction moratorium, which is incredibly important. Something that I didn't think would happen. I kind of thought it would be left by the wayside, only because no one was talking about it. The big things they've been talking about is the UI, or the unemployment insurance, and the $1,200 check, which has also not been talked about a lot either. But those were the two things that were the biggest. They were the biggest concerns of the average American, and the biggest thing that the senators have been talking about. But Larry Kudlow did say today that they were going to extend the eviction moratorium. Now, the only issue is he didn't give a date, which is kind of troublesome because right now, a lot of people who maybe don't have a job, or maybe just they've lost 20% of their wages, they've lost hours. It's happening to everyone. They may not be able to pay rent. And right now, what you really need is stability. You need to know when. Like, how long can I stay at this place? How long am I going to be covered? The last eviction moratorium also was. It ended in a very arbitrary date. It was essentially, hey, when the pandemic's over, that's when this is going to end. And basically, what happened in July was enough cases came down that were like, oh, it's over. And once the cases started coming back up towards middle of July, they were like, oh, I guess it's not. But no one was at work. They were all on break, and so no one extended the moratorium or even talked about it. But luckily, it did get extended. There will not be 30 million new homeless Americans running around. Uh, Again, I did mention UI, the $600 bonus plus up, whatever people are calling it, that has really kind of kept our economy the head above water just slightly. That did run out last week, and that has been the main focus of both GOP and Democrats right now. The GOP, though, they're battling on how they want to handle it. The Democrats just want to fund it full, $600 per week. Let's go. The argument with that is that people are getting paid more than they do when they're at work. So why would they go back to work if they're making more money not being at work? And that's fair. And I do think that there are cases where people are doing that. I also think that there's a ton of people who are just too scared to go back to work. They don't want to die. Uh, Also, I think this points out to something that maybe right now isn't the time to talk about it, but soon after we should remember that the way that they came up with this was that the average American can live off of $4,000 a month. Now, if all of these people aren't getting paid $4,000 a month, there's a problem here, because then that means the average American doesn't make that much money. So you're going to tell me that that's the standard of living, but yet everybody is below that standard? And you can't just blame the businesses, you can't blame the people who aren't paying enough money, because they probably couldn't if they wanted to, because our economy amongst Main Street and working class people is so damn low that paying somebody $15 an hour is just really, really hard to do. We don't have the money floating around. We don't have the Fed pumping in trillions of dollars into our market. I digress. The GOP, on the other hand, though, with the UI, that $600 plus up, they have basically floated two ideas that I've seen. One is just cutting it by about $400 a week, down to $200. So a person would get their unemployment, which is 40% of what they made per check when they were working, and they'll get an extra $200 instead of that 40% plus an extra $600. I think that's an awful number. It's just not going to do anything. It's too low to make an impact. As far as the economy is concerned, and remember, this is for a stimulus package. This is to keep the economy going. To the average American, yeah, $800 extra a month is great, but not when you're losing 60% of your funds that you were making before. It might just round it up to where they were making exactly the same amount, but I kind of doubt it. Looking at the math, it seems like most people will still be short about $100 to $200. which just means that they're not going to be spending a lot of money, which means they're not going to be selling a lot of, they're not going to be buying a lot of stuff, and people aren't going to be selling a lot of stuff, and our economy is going to dip. That's just the way it is. Now, the other argument, which I think is maybe a little bit more on par with something that's sustainable yet lowering that bill a little bit, is the GOP floated a 70%. So that means people are losing about 30% of their annual income, so to speak, while on unemployment. And the only issue with this one is that while it doesn't take somebody down to 60% or 50%, as far as that $200 would, or it doesn't bolster somebody way above what they normally make, in some cases double, like that $600 does, doing it at a straight 70% does still have them losing 30%, which is a problem. And it does kind of force them to get out and work, which isn't, look, if that's their goal, fine, that does it. But the biggest issue is it is so individualized. Like, they have to understand and go through what each American makes and then figure out, okay, this is how much they get for unemployment. That's 70% of their regular check. That's going to be a nightmare to do. To put something like that in play when they couldn't do the $1,200 checks right, this is way, way more work, far more tedious than anything we've done in a very, very long time. So I don't see that one actually working or happening. I think they're going to have to go with the standard, and which is, hey, what does the average American make? And that's the problem that we're running into. Just like I was saying before, when people were complaining that the $600 is too much, well, that's because of averages. Namely, the 1%. The 1% brings that average up so high that the average American doesn't make it, and then they're not making that when they go back to work. And so, yeah, maybe they stay on unemployment. Maybe they don't. It's hard to say. I'm not going to completely buy into the fact that Americans don't want to work because they're making more money being on unemployment. Because the reality is everyone knows that is incredibly unstable. And they're in a situation like they are here. Most people want money that they can count on, even if it's not as much as what they were making before. But that's the situation we're in right now. I will say, too, I don't know if I covered it yet because I kind of flew over a bunch of stuff. The $1,200 check, as far as I know, it's going to happen. There has been no debates on that on either side, which is good for, stimulating the economy because it did really, really well that last time. The only problem is it also worked really, really well with that extra $600 every week. So are we going to see it not be as powerful as it was in March? Potentially. That might be it. So just a quick overview of what we know so far right now. The eviction moratorium has been extended. That will go on indefinitely. We don't know yet for how long. The UI, or unemployment plus up, we have absolutely no idea what they're going to run with. Anywhere between $200 extra to 70% extra, or 70% total. We have absolutely no idea. I do know that they will pitch an idea that is below the $600. They will turn it over to the Democrats. The Democrats will say, we're not signing until you get it to $600. I already know that number is arbitrary right now. It doesn't mean anything. And we know that the $1,200 checks, as far as everyone has been on board, it's going to work, go through, people are going to get that check. The other one issue that I wanted to talk about is payroll tax cuts and the Trust Act. Both of those fairly important when it comes to the stimulus package that is floated by the GOP, because Stephen Moore has said that without a doubt the payroll tax cut will be in there. They had said that this entire time leading up to last week, but last Friday when we actually saw what they were talking about, there was no payroll tax cut. But apparently that will change, and that tax cut will be in there tomorrow. The other thing I wanted to mention, though, was the Trust Act, which is something that hasn't been floated around, hasn't been talked about, but it's a GOP little puppet that they're playing with. And what the Trust Act does is it will effectively cut and lower Social Security. They want to make cuts to Social Security because they want to worry about the deficit. I think that that's fair in a different time. If you want to worry about it, great. I can make a lot of other examples on how you can feed back into the deficit without going into Social Security, but fine, whatever. If that's where you want to be, but not in a stimulus package. That's the exact opposite of what a stimulus package does. You don't cut Social Security to try to save money on a stimulus package. We will see if they implement that. I have heard that floated around as well. Anyway, take care, guys.